Chief McClellan and his staff been working with the department now for, I guess, about 6 months, and have had tremendous cooperation in all respects toward getting the new independent lab organization up and running. This presentation today will do three important things. First, it's a great deal for the taxpayers because of the value that we're able to guarantee to these labs over a period of time, we're getting a great price, and that's important. Second, it's good for the independent lab because we're able to come in and know exactly what our target is. It's the target of handling the incoming cases that are coming in on a daily basis and keeping up with those and not allowing the backlog to occur. But most importantly, it's good for victims. You know, we talk about which cases get tested, which cases don't get tested. To me, the crucial decision is when that victim allows the invasive process of gathering that evidence to occur. And once that's happened, we need to do everything we can do to make sure that that evidence is tested and we get whatever information we can get out of that evidence. And with this contract in place, when the council puts it in place next week or the week after, we will get to a position where we can guarantee every victim that sexual assault evidence or other DNA evidence will be processed thoroughly and promptly. And that's a great victory for the city of Houston and for the mayor and council. So thank you for your help with that.
Could we get the proper spelling of your name, please, and your title?
First name Scott with 2 T's, last name Hoch, B as in boy, E-R-G. I'm the chair of the Houston Forensic Science Local Government Corporation.
Scott, will these testing be done in a timely manner in time for them to go to court so these people who committed the rape be prosecuted? And what is the statute of limitation on the past rape kits that is more than 5 or 10 years old?
I'm going to pass that to Chief Slinkert because he's looked very specifically at that question.
And I'm going to answer it as well. There were law enforcement reasons why these cases were not tested. Those were laid out in the presentation to council. For most of these sexual assault kits, the case has been adjudicated in some way already. What we might hope for from the testing is that if in fact this was a serial rapist, if in fact this was a person who was involved in other types of crimes, once we upload it into CODIS, there'll be a hit. It is not anticipated that this will generate a huge volume of reopened cases. There may be some surprises there, but for the most part, these cases have been disposed of previously. And Chief Slinkert, do you want to add anything to that?
To answer your question regarding statute of limitations, it depends on the case. There can be different facts in each case that would affect the statute of limitations, and if the tolling stops on statute of limitation.
Chief, that 600, that 6,600 plus number, you arrived at that about a year ago. Have you ever been able to ascertain out of that 6,600 how many of those are dealing with truly open cases, not the ones that have been adjudicated, not the ones that it's either deemed consensual or other factors that the case is technically over and done with? Out of that 6,600 plus, how many of those are true active cases?
Those cases that backlog of 6,663 are the ones where no request from an investigator ever came forward. So those would be categorized as inactive cases. Now, with the change in the statute, the fact that a report was made and evidence exists mandates that we go forward and we test those. So now, if the result is received from the testing on that, then that could be a reactivated investigation.
But technically, it wasn't that it wasn't adjudicated. It was just there was no request from the investigator. There
So
was,
that,
yeah.
and prior to the statute changing, that's part of the process. That's part of the investigative process is when a request goes forward to allow for testing. Now, with the change in the statute, it's required that it be submitted to an apprentice evaluation.
There's been an implication that these kids were just ignored over the years, and that's been one of my frustrations, and I know it's been extremely painful to the police department to hear that. These were not, in any case, something that was ignored. There were, for whatever reasons of the investigation, the investigating officers did not request for the testing. Maybe it was an issue of consent. You knew who the two parties were. Maybe it was an issue of there was other evidence, and we laid out some of those reasons. They've never been ignored, but we've kept them stored in our property division. Now we have an opportunity to just completely clear the books. And I would also point out that DNA has progressed almost unimaginably in the years that we've been collecting these sexual assault kits. And there's a lot more information you can glean today than you could. So in one way, having these still on hand it's a financial issue. It's been a problem, and in most circumstances they would have been destroyed years ago. In another viewpoint, this is an opportunity to go back and find if there was anything there that was missed over the years.
If
So-
funds were available since last summer, if it was in the budget, why not move forward until now, particularly when you've been working with Sorensen for 3 years, I think it is, outsourcing cases with them already?
Funds were put into the budget beginning in July as part of the current budget, but we still had to find labs with the capacity to handle the caseload. And we also had to figure out what is it that we wanted them to do by looking at this issue differently, combining it with active cases, really getting the volume up and driving the price down. And we set aside $5 million of tax revenue to try to deal with this issue. Now we're looking at a situation, because we waited a few months and really drilled down, where we're spending $2.2 million in local tax dollars to take care of the issue. So we believe that the time has been well spent.
So practically speaking, when will this go in front of council to vote on it? So when will the
The two contracts will go next week.
and then when do you expect the backlog to be cleared in the best case scenario?
The contracts specify 12 to 14 months, but they're not going to hold them for 12 months. They're going to be doing initial screening. Some of them may not have any DNA to test. That means they're off the books, we go on down the road. And they're going to be returning them to us on an aggressive schedule. They're not interested in sitting on these cases.
This has been a bone of contention in months past relating to independent crime lab and things like that. Do you anticipate once this get cleared, maybe it'll help the whole county, city, independent crime lab marriage thing down the road? Because it's been mentioned before as an issue by certain commissioners.
We have a really good working relationship with Harris County, and that working relationship continues to improve. This does remove one of the areas of debate. We began sending a trickle of DNA cases to Harris County, but that was all that they could handle. And then as part of their move, they indicated to us that they really couldn't handle those cases. And so by having productive dialogue and actually now being able to come in and say, look, for 1/3 of the cost of what what the county can process these kits, we can outsource them. We can have a more productive conversation of what is the true cost of providing the service, who does it better, what can we share, what should we share, what makes sense for the taxpayers. And by having this data, it helps us move forward.
Chief Senator, I'm sorry, one last question about the 6,600. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. You do not believe that any of those 6,600 kits are tied to any unsolved cases. You believe that in some form or fashion, with the prosecution or dropping it, requesting complaining with the 6,600. I'm trying to
No,
understand.
that's a different question. For example,
Okay.
we are going to send forward kits for testing, like the mayor has stated, in cases that have, in some respects, been adjudicated. Meaning, there could have been other evidence in the case. There could have been a confession from a suspect. Somebody could have been arrested, charged, and actually convicted in a case where that testing did not take place. Or for whatever reason, because the details of the investigation, either the law enforcement investigation or the subsequent investigation by the district attorney's office, proved that the testing of the kit wasn't probative at the time. Now that issue does not matter. The statute requires that if we have it, it's going to go forward for testing.
Right.
So some of those are going to argue
Some of
adjudicated.
those guys who's we collected this evidence for a particular case may be involved in other cases.
Right.
And so yes, it is possible. So when you say, an unsolved case or an open case, not these cases, but it may link them to other cases, and that is what the hope is.
But if it wasn't for the state law, you probably wouldn't have tested a lot of these cases because I guess at first blush in some of your investigations they weren't required or needed or asked for or whatever.
We have been dealing with this for some time. First it was, let's figure out what the problem is, then how do we solve it, and solving it required revenues. But then it actually became not a matter of law, but a matter of policy. And the state legislature actually took the policy decision. We were moving in this direction anyway, and that's why we've been working to find the revenue to do this, but the legislature made the policy decision for us.
Mayor,
Going on that,
what do you think, some of these cases have already been adjudicated, as you point out. In your opinion, is any of this a waste of money?
That's the policy question. Councilmember Cohen actually expressed this very well today. The policy question is, once someone is raped, whether that is a woman, child, man, once someone is raped, and they come forward and say, I have been raped, and they put themselves through the collection of evidence for a sexual assault kit, is it important to determine, quite apart from that particular incident, if the person involved was potentially involved in other crimes? That is a political issue, it's a policy issue, it's an issue, it's a moral issue for a lot of people. What we're doing is we are going to test everything. And going forward, we are going to test everything. You're willing to put yourself through the evidence collection, we have a responsibility to honor that decision.
Policy aside, the new state law aside, morality aside, just from a purely investigative standpoint, had it not been this new law passed, would there, from an investigative standpoint, be a need to test these 6,600 plus?
If there had been an investigative need to test these, we would have tested it in the past.
did you determine how many of them during the audit? I know that that was part of it, you kind of determined the circumstances of each case because the databases have changed over time, because there were a lot of these issues. Exactly what had been submitted, what kind of evidence had been submitted, who had, if a witness had come, another witness had come forward, but
That's why it took so long.
So were you able to determine and break those down into how many cases are each? Do you have that breakdown?
I don't have that insight to you right here, but part of our review, when we looked at the 6,663 that have been stored, and we say, what are we going to do? Because resources may not be there to do everything when we started this initiative. Now, luckily, with the support of the mayor and the administration, we've been able to come up with a plan that we can do this and do it all within the resources. But in the beginning, it takes a complete investigative review. That's requiring opening up nearly 7,000 different investigations to look at the case characteristics, to find out different things. Was the complainant an adult? Was the complainant a juvenile? Different things regarding the case. Why wasn't there a request for testing to begin with? What are the case specifics? Was it an issue of consent? Some of those things that we covered today in the presentation. Because without having a plan that we do now to be able to do everything, the entire volume of work, then the priority scheme is going to be very important. Meaning, with the limited amount of resources, what actually needs to go first that we can accomplish? So yes, we had to do a complete case review to break those things down.
And were you able to do that? You do have everything organized in a priority. You have it all broken down.
Yeah, there will be a priority as the cases get shipped out. Now, luckily, the vendors have expressed, their interest in wanting to get all of the work as soon as possible and up front. So we're happy about that because the priority, if we were doing much smaller shipments, would be much more important because we would be wanting the more important cases or the cases that were crucial to go forward faster than the others.
So with that, I know I have kind of a two-part question. I apologize. One, the property crime. One, as I understood it, I was wondering. I know you're sending property crimes to these labs as well. When did the Houston Police Department start collecting evidence, like catch DNA in property crime cases? Because as I understand it, that Houston Police Department wasn't testing DNA in property crimes because there were other priority cases like homicides and sexual assault kits. Second, the statute of limitations is much more strict, where it's a little bit hazy and subjective, each case by case in sexual assaults. In property crimes, there are much more strict guidelines. So how far back do those property crime cases go?
The fact that the violent crime cases would come first doesn't mean that we want to prohibit or limit an investigative or investigator's response. If something has solvability factors, meaning at the scene of a property crime, and there is bodily fluid or some type of touch DNA to collect, then obviously we want the chance to solve that case at some point. So those cases being requested by investigators and that evidence being submitted to the lab has gone on, it has taken place. But trying to test those property crimes is always going to become secondary to violent crimes of these persons. So that's why we haven't gotten to the property crimes list that we discussed today.
Scott,
How many cases you have where there is DNA with the property crime?
Like we talked about today, there was 1,020
Oh, that's.
of those that need to go forward that are your non-sexual assault related
Is
cases.
the new lab gonna test for property crime now? Will the new lab be testing for property crime as well?
We're gonna test DNA when we have it, and we prioritize the cases. And so you're asking the wrong question. Yes, we're gonna test DNA when we think it's gonna be important to solving the case, but we're always gonna work first from a priority of some kind of violent crime.
How far back does 1020 go?
We can get you that number, I don't have it with me, but
We're also gonna be sending
What was
a
it?
significant volume of cases that are coming in the door while we've got this price. And there is a little bit of extra work on behalf of the current crime lab, because once this data comes back, they've got to work with the department, the investigators. They also have to be the ones to upload it into CODIS. And so while we're going through this transition, we are also going to be sending some of the current caseload to make sure we don't fall behind.
Is everything gonna go into CODIS? I mean, everything with biological material present, is that just gonna be?
let me clarify one thing on 1,020 before we go, because I don't want to get that wrong. I want to make sure these numbers are very clear. Okay? There is a property crime involved in that, but there also could be another violent offense like a robbery. It's something other than a sexual assault. Okay? Now, on the CODIS upload or CODIS entry, that is determined based on the results that we get after a test. Meaning, for a CODIS entry to happen, then you have to have a profile that meets certain standards. That makes it eligible for upload to CODIS. And that CODIS upload has to be done by a law enforcement or government entity. So that's why these outside labs don't do the CODIS upload and CODIS entry.
But no, what I'm asking, when you do get back those that do meet that criteria for upload, will all those cases just automatically be uploaded into CODIS by HPD or?
As cases come back and the technical review that's required is completed, and it's eligible for a CODIS upload, then yes, it will go to CODIS.
Scott, there seems to be an insensitivity to the rape kits that are going to be tested. Because in this room, we have a majority of women. And if a woman's been raped, I don't think she cares about whether or not this guy broke into somebody else's house and robbed her and stuff like that. She wants to get her rape over with. She wants to get the person in jail for doing that. And it seems as though there's an insensitivity to that specific fact. Now, Mrs. Cohen, she expressed and put a face on this situation that hasn't been done for a while. Actual women have been raped, and women came to city council several months ago and during the year in outrage because these rape kits have not been tested.
Tony, and I addressed this issue earlier, and I understand how wrenching it is. I understand how emotional this is, and I guarantee you, for the women around this council table, it's a hugely personal issue. These kids were not ignored, and the perpetrators were not allowed to just walk away. There were various reasons why the kits were not tested originally. Public thinking has changed. Our public attitude about what we do with available DNA when it comes to law enforcement has changed, and that's really, it's changed the discussion. I do think it is important to test these kids, to test all of them. I don't care, police department will, but I don't care whether they're beyond the statute of limitations. We've made the decision, we're going forward, we're going to test it, and if we have the ability to load this, we get the data we can load into CODIS and find somebody that's still on the street, that will be money well spent. Now I want to move on to Hobby Airport. Is there questions?